There's a moment after the doctor leaves the room and before your wife has time to speak, when the world goes quiet. Not the kind of quiet you get in the middle of the night, but something colder, emptier. A silence that wraps around your chest and doesn't let go. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. We were in a pediatric hospital room, surrounded by pastel walls and cartoon murals that had stopped being comforting weeks ago. My son, Eli, lay in the bed behind me, 6 years old and slipping fast. A rare blood disorder, they said. Treatable, but we were losing time. They needed genetic matches. They needed answers. What they didn't expect was what the test results revealed. When Dr. Rami handed me the file, he didn't look me in the eyes. That was the first sign. The second was the way he asked us both to sit down, his fingers laced too tightly, the way someone might hold onto the edge of a cliff. I need you both to prepare yourselves, he said. The test came back. Mr. Calloway, I'm afraid you're not Eli's biological father. The sentence landed like a knife. Beside me, Lauren's breath caught. Her hand flew to her mouth. What? She whispered. That's not possible. That has to be a mistake. But the doctor didn't flinch. We ran it twice. The maternal match confirmed. Eli is your biological child, Mrs. Calloway. But Mr. Calloway, there's no match. I didn't hear what else he said. I think he started explaining the implications, what it meant for donor compatibility, future procedures, medical privacy. All I could hear was the sound of my pulse hammering in my ears. Not the father. Not the father. Lauren kept shaking her head, her voice climbing into a frantic pitch. That's not possible. There must have been a mix-up. Can't you test again? He looks like him. Everyone says it. She grabbed my arm like that would somehow prove her right. Like my skin would remember something her body couldn't explain. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping across the linoleum. I was cold in places I shouldn't have been, like my bones had already started to rot. We'll get it retested, I said, my voice foreign to my own ears. We'll double-check. But that wasn't what stuck with me from that room. It wasn't the diagnosis or the shock on Lauren's face. It was the doctor's next words. I understand this is difficult, he said quietly. But Mr. Calloway, our lab doesn't make mistakes. And the alleles don't lie. This wasn't a case of misattributed paternity. Based on the markers, this wasn't random. The child's paternal DNA appears to be known to Mrs. Calloway. Statistically speaking, she would have known. Would have known. Those words echoed in my head long after we left the hospital. Lauren swore up and down that she hadn't cheated, that she never even suspected, that it had to be something else, an anomaly, maybe from her egg, or a freak mix-up at the lab, or something even more unthinkable. She clung to me outside the building like a woman drowning, her eyes wide with terror. You have to believe me, she said. Eli is yours. He is. I've never been with anyone else. I swear it. I didn't say anything. Not because I believed her, but because I wasn't sure what the truth felt like anymore. The parking lot blurred as we walked to the car. The wind had that brittle early spring bite, the kind that cuts through clothes and skin alike. She fumbled with the keys, hands trembling. Maybe it was from when I was on those fertility meds, she stammered. Remember? That was a rough time. We did IVF after trying for so long. What if they used someone else's? Lauren, I said, my voice low, controlled. We didn't do IVF. We never made it that far. She froze. The lie was so casual I almost missed it, but I caught the way her face dropped. Just for a moment. Like a mask slipping. Wait, she said too quickly. That's not. Didn't we do? No, we saw a specialist. You're right. Sorry. I'm confused, okay? I'm panicking. But I remember that you're perfectly. The savings we burned through. The nights she sobbed in the bathroom when the test strips came up negative. The way she pulled away from me, gradually, like something small had died inside her and she couldn't stand to name it. We talked about IVF. Even went to the orientation. But she backed out, said it felt invasive, said she wanted to try the natural way one more time. And then, like a miracle, she was pregnant. Except maybe it wasn't a miracle. I didn't confront her that night. Eli's fever spiked, and the nurses rushed in. Alarms buzzed. There wasn't time to scream, or accuse, or throw things across the room like I wanted to. I sat beside my son's bed, watching his tiny chest rise and fall, and told myself none of it mattered. That the only thing that counted was getting him better. But the thing is, betrayal doesn't wait for convenience. It rots in the silence. It waits for you in the pause between breathing and blinking. It doesn't care that your child is dying. It doesn't care that your whole life is unraveling in slow motion. It just festers. And in the quiet of that hospital room, while Lauren slept curled on the cot behind me, I watched the monitors blink and wondered whose child I'd been raising, whose eyes looked up at me every night before bed, whose laugh echoed down our hallway. And I started to realize something I hadn't let myself think before. She knew. Maybe not from the beginning. Maybe not at the first ultrasound. But somewhere along the line, she figured it out. And she kept it from me. And now that I knew, the smallest things stopped making sense. The way her mother never mentioned Eli's resemblance to me. The way her old co-worker Mark used to linger around the house too long during Eli's first year. The way Lauren used to flinch, just a little, when I'd say our boy. That night, when I stepped outside to get air, I opened my phone and searched the genetic report again. I zoomed in on the raw data. The bottom of the form showed something else. A note from the lab confirming high likelihood match for known nonparental male allele grouping. Underneath that, in a small, cruel typeface, was a phrase I will never forget. Paternal allele match aligns with known profile from emergency contact. M. Dwyer. Mark Dwyer. Her old coworker. Our emergency contact. She hadn't just known. She had covered it up. And now everything. The years, the laughs, the nights she reached for me in the dark like I was her safe place, meant something else. They meant nothing. I stared at the hospital parking lot for so long that the motion sensor lights started turning off around me. Mark Dwyer. The name had always lingered in the background, like old furniture you stop noticing. He was a coworker at Lauren's old firm, friendly, too friendly. I remembered the way she used to say, "Oh, Mark's just like a brother," when I raised an eyebrow. How he showed up unannounced with takeout during her third trimester. How he'd babysit for short stints when we were desperate. I'd thanked him. I'd shaken his hand. I never saw it. The worst betrayals aren't loud. They don't come with lipstick on collars or late-night phone calls. Sometimes, they come in the form of a man who holds your son's hand while you run to get a juice box, who stands beside you in the ER waiting room while your world crumbles, who says, "We're all here for you." I knew I should confront Lauren, but the thing about a betrayal like this, it hollows you out. You don't explode. You deflate. Instead, I drove home that night, alone, for the first time in weeks, just to grab fresh clothes. But I didn't walk into our house like I used to. I stood in the doorway and saw it with new eyes. The hallway photos, Lauren holding Eli, but never us three together. A drawing on the fridge, Mommy and Eli. I was missing from half of it. I always thought it was just how kids drew things. Now, I wasn't so sure. I sat down on the couch and opened the locked drawer of my desk. The place I'd kept everything I didn't want to look at: bills, old birthday cards, the hospital invoices. But there, tucked between papers I hadn't touched in years, was a folder marked Fertility Options 2015. I hadn't seen it since we got the good news. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't what I found. There were printouts, emails, a few pages from a donor site, though they were half-filled and never submitted. But one email thread caught my attention. From Lauren to someone with an anonymous address. "Can we meet? I'm late. This could be serious." Dated exactly 1 month before she announced the pregnancy to me. There was no reply in the folder, just the subject line repeating over and over. Please respond. I'm scared. My breath caught. I didn't want this to be true. I didn't want to think of Eli's life beginning like this, like an accident, like a secret. But something deeper inside me knew it had always been there, like a hum you only hear when the noise dies down. I returned to the hospital the next morning with a coffee I couldn't drink and eyes that hadn't seen sleep. Lauren looked up as I stepped into the room. She was holding Eli's hand, humming something soft and wordless. Her face lit up when she saw me. It made my stomach turn. I was starting to worry, she said, her voice quiet. I didn't sit down. We need to talk. She looked around, as if trying to read the temperature in the room. About the test? I know it's confusing, but I've been reading things. Lab errors happen. And if it's Mark, it's only because. I stepped closer. You said you didn't cheat. I didn't, she whispered. Then why did the lab find a match between Eli's DNA and Mark Dwyer? Her face drained of color. It was a visible collapse, like a tower folding in on itself. But she didn't cry. Not right away. I didn't know for sure, she finally said, her voice a breath above silence. It was just one night. It was a mistake. I thought we were done trying. I thought you were going to leave. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words didn't fit into my mouth. So you slept with him, I said, quieter than I meant to, and then came home and told me we had a miracle. I didn't think I could get pregnant, she said quickly. And when I did, I wanted it to be yours. I needed it to be yours. Do you understand? I told myself it was. I convinced myself. You convinced yourself? I made peace with it, Jacob. I made a choice. We made a life. You raised him. You're his father in every way that matters. No, I said, and something inside me snapped like a dry branch. You made a lie. I made a life out of it. I didn't walk out that day. I stayed because Eli needed me. I stayed because somewhere between the hospital alarms and the pediatric IVs, I forgot how to be anything but a father. But something shifted after that conversation, subtle at first. The way I'd brush past Lauren without touching her. The way I started sleeping in the chair instead of the cot. She noticed. And then something happened I didn't expect. She confessed something else. It was 3 days later. Eli's condition had stabilized enough for him to be moved to a longer-term care wing. I was packing up the overnight bag when Lauren stepped into the corner of the room, her voice low and brittle. There's more, she said. I didn't look at her. Of course there is. It wasn't just Mark. I stopped, turned to her slowly. My hands numb. She couldn't look at me. There was a stretch, after we thought we couldn't conceive. I was lost. Angry. I didn't think you saw me anymore. And Mark, he was there. But so was someone else. I don't even know if Eli is his. My knees buckled. Not in the dramatic way people write about. Just a small, silent descent into the nearest chair. You mean you're not even sure who the father is? She didn't answer. Just nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks now. Too late. Too clean. My mind fractured. The betrayal wasn't just a crack anymore. It was a chasm. And beneath it was everything I had built. Every bedtime story. Every scraped knee I kissed. Every, I love you, Dad, that now felt like a lie whispered by someone else's child. And yet, he was still mine. I still felt that. Which made it worse. There's a sound I still remember from that night. Not the beeping monitors, or the rustle of the nurse adjusting Eli's for. It was quieter than that. The sound of my son, whispering in his sleep. Dad. That word landed differently now. It came with weight. With questions I didn't know how to answer. But it also came with a strange, painful kind of relief. He still said it. He still meant me. Lauren had gone home. I told her I needed space, and for once, she didn't argue. Maybe even she knew her presence was more disruptive than healing now. I sat in the chair beside Eli's bed with the glow of the monitors washing everything in cold blue. His fingers, still so small, peeked out from the blanket. I reached out, held them gently. It didn't matter what blood said. Not right then. Not in that room. I raised this boy. I memorized the way his shoulders shook when he cried, the specific tone he used when he was lying, the exact rhythm of his footsteps when he ran into my arms. I taught him how to hold a pencil, how to balance on a bike, how to say, "I'm sorry," when he broke something that couldn't be fixed. No test could take that from me. But the test did something else. It made me wonder what else Lauren had taken. I requested the full testing documents from the hospital the next morning. Said it was for future donor evaluations. That was half true. I wanted to see the alleles again. Needed to confirm what she said about not knowing the father. It made no sense. How could someone not know? But when the records came in, something jumped out at me. 2 sets of flagged markers under potential biological paternal matches. One with a 98.6% match. The other, 92.4%. 2 matches. 2 men. And then a note at the bottom. Paternal allele match, 92.4%, identified as known donor in secondary medical emergency contact system. Name, Charles W. Nolan. Not Mark. Charles Nolan. I felt my stomach drop. Charles was Lauren's ex. Not just any ex, her on-again, off-again boyfriend from college. The one she'd said she hadn't spoken to in years. The one she called a mess. But here he was, in our emergency contact system, still flagged in her information at the hospital. Still relevant. She'd told me she cut him off a decade ago. But something didn't fit. You don't list ghosts as emergency contacts. I found his number through a mutual friend. Told myself I wasn't going to call. I just needed it. Just in case. Then I called. It rang 3 times before a groggy voice picked up. Hello? Is this Charles Nolan? Yeah. Who's this? I paused, unsure how to even begin. My name is Jacob Calloway. I think you might be the biological father of my son. Silence. Then a slow, "What the hell are you talking about?" I told him about the test. About Lauren. About Eli's condition. He didn't deny anything. In fact, he went quiet for so long that I thought the line dropped. Then, she told me she wasn't sure. What do you mean? She called me 6 years ago. Said she was pregnant. But said it was probably yours. That you'd been trying. Said she was going to raise him with you, no matter what. That it was better that way. And you just let her? I was a wreck back then, man. She said it wasn't my business. Said she'd handle it. I believed her. Do you know you're listed as an emergency contact? That got him. What? No. I haven't even talked to her in years. Not since that call. I didn't know if I believed him. But something about the way his voice cracked at the end made me pause. She lied to both of us, I said quietly. Yeah, he muttered. Looks like she did. I didn't tell Lauren I talked to Charles. Not yet. Instead, I started pulling threads. Small ones at first. Quiet, careful lies, the kind you tell to confirm other lies. I called the hospital's billing department and asked for a list of who had been given authorization on Eli's medical file. Lauren and I were listed, of course. But there was a third name, M. Dwyer. Not just an emergency contact. A proxy. I didn't know what game Lauren had been playing, whether it was a backup plan or a mistake. But suddenly, Mark wasn't just an affair. He had legal standing. He had access. I went to the front desk and asked to have all non-parent access removed from the file. The nurse frowned at me. You'll need both parents to sign off on that. So I handed her the test results. The redacted section showing I wasn't the biological father. She paled. I didn't say anything else. Just stared at her until she nodded and began processing the change. That night, Lauren showed up at the hospital looking nervous. She brought food. Tried to smile. I didn't take the bag from her hand. Just looked at her and said, Why is Mark Dwyer listed as a medical proxy for Eli? Her smile dropped. I must have filled out that form years ago. I don't remember doing that. Before or after the test you told me you never got? She swallowed. I don't remember. You don't remember lying to me? I didn't lie, she snapped, too quickly. I just didn't tell you everything. That's not how memory works, Lauren. You don't forget who you told the hospital could make decisions about your son's life. She stepped back like I'd hit her. You're angry, she said. I get it. No, you don't. She blinked. I would have forgiven you for one night, I continued. I would have forgiven you for being scared. Maybe even for lying to yourself about who the father was. But this was a plan. You involved other men. You manipulated the paperwork. You controlled the story so I wouldn't ask questions. Because you would have left, she whispered. And there it was. The real reason. You thought I'd leave, I said. So you decided to build a life on top of a lie instead. I had to, she said. I couldn't lose you. I couldn't raise him alone. You didn't have to raise him alone. You just had to tell the truth. She looked at me for a long time, eyes full of water. But I'd stopped mistaking tears for remorse. Later that week, I met with a lawyer. Not for custody. Not yet. Just to ask a question I didn't want the answer to. Did I have any legal rights to Eli? The lawyer looked through the paperwork, the test results, and shook her head. You're not the biological father. And the birth certificate wasn't formally amended. Technically, in this state, you have no legal standing. I sat there, the air thick and choking. But, she added, there's something else. If you can prove parental alienation, or that Lauren knowingly withheld paternity information, you might be able to challenge for legal guardianship. How likely is that to work? She met my eyes. Unlikely. I stepped outside into the gray evening, clutching a folder filled with paper that meant nothing and everything. I sat in my car and looked down at a photo I kept in the glove box. Eli on my shoulders, his hands tangled in my hair, both of us laughing. He called me Dad, but I was becoming a ghost in his story, and I wasn't sure how to stay visible. There's something obscene about a lie that goes on this long. It becomes architecture, structural. It's in the walls of your house, the names in your phone, the way your child pronounces spaghetti because someone else taught them that first. A lie that long stops being a deception. It becomes a reality you're forced to live inside, one brick at a time, while someone else holds the blueprint. Lauren didn't bring food to the hospital after that week. She stopped showing up on time. Sometimes she wouldn't come at all. She said it was stress, work, her health. I didn't press. I just sat with Eli, reading him stories, wiping his mouth, watching as the corners of his face paled with each new test. He'd gotten quieter lately. The energy that once made him bounce through hallways and giggle at his own jokes was retreating. He was sleeping more. I think, deep down, he knew something had shifted. And I was starting to accept something too. The woman I married didn't exist anymore. Or maybe she never did. I needed more than conversations and test results. I needed proof. So I started looking. Quietly. Systematically. Lauren had always used a personal laptop, separate from our family one. She said it helped her compartmentalize. I never questioned it before, but now it seemed like a convenient place to hide entire chapters of our life. She left it at the house one afternoon, after dropping off clothes and not staying long enough to speak. It was on the kitchen counter, plugged in, lid closed. Like bait. I waited till she left the driveway. Then I opened it. She'd never been good with passwords. She reused the same phrase for everything. Eli's middle name and her favorite number. It took me one try. The desktop was mostly clean. A few folders labeled work, photos, and taxes. But I didn't start there. I went to the email app and typed Charles into the search bar. Nothing. Then Mark. Too many results. I refined it. Mark Dwyer. And that's when the threads began to come loose. Email after email. Most of them boring. Some flirty. A few damning. One, dated around the time she got pregnant. Simply read. You'll always mean something to me. But I need to do this with Jacob. He's stable. He's safe. And he won't leave. Another, months later, sent with an attachment. It's a boy. You don't need to be involved. I'm not asking for anything. Just thought you should know. The attachment was an ultrasound photo. But the worst email wasn't to Mark or Charles. It was to her mother. Subject line, if it ever comes up. The body of the email was cold. Clean. It read like a script. If Jacob ever finds out, just say we weren't sure. Say the doctor told us testing wasn't necessary. Say I was fragile and that we were told the stress would be dangerous during pregnancy. He'll believe it. He always wants to believe the best in people. There was an attached PDF, some kind of legal document draft. My stomach turned as I opened it. It was a petition to remove me from Eli's birth certificate. Dated only a year ago. Never filed, but signed. Signed. By her. The lie wasn't just old. It was ongoing. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I just laid out the papers on the hospital table one by one and watched her face change shape. Why? I asked. Why would you prepare this and then say nothing? I didn't file it, she said weakly. I couldn't. That doesn't make it better. She reached out for the papers, but I put my hand on them. No, you don't get to make this disappear. I was scared, she said. You were so good with him. I didn't want to ruin that. You didn't want to ruin your version of it, I said. But you didn't care what it cost me. She stared at the stack, then at me, and something in her changed. She stopped crying, stopped pleading. She just got quiet. You're not on the birth certificate, she said. Legally, you don't have rights. And you never formally adopted him. I looked into it after he was born. We didn't think it was necessary at the time, remember? I trusted you, I said, and it felt pathetic as I said it. I know, she whispered. That was the problem. The lawyer said we needed leverage if I wanted to fight. Proof that she acted maliciously, knowingly, against Eli's best interests. Emotional manipulation wouldn't be enough. But something else was. I brought in the document, the unsigned petition, the emails, the proof of Mark's medical proxy rights, the conflicting paternity indicators from the hospital. And then I showed her one more thing. A financial record. A monthly auto transfer from an account Lauren controlled, quietly funneling money into a secondary account listed under Mark's name. It had started 6 years ago, right after Eli was born, and only stopped the month the DNA results came in. There was no note. Just quiet, recurring payments. As if she'd been paying for silence. Or support. Or maybe both. Can you prove that she knew? The lawyer asked. She signed the petition, I said. She wrote the script for how to lie. She listed 2 different men as potential proxies for my son. And she kept me off his paperwork. You tell me. The lawyer didn't answer right away. Then she sat back and said, we might have a case. When I told Lauren I was filing for guardianship, she laughed. Actually laughed. You really think a judge is going to let you take him from me? She said. You're not even related to him. No, I said. But I'm the one who's been here every day. Every night. I'm the one he calls Dad. And I'm going to make sure that still means something. She looked at me differently then. Like she finally understood something I hadn't shown her before. That I wasn't bluffing. That I wasn't breaking. I was building something new. Without her. I always thought courtrooms were about justice. But they're really about perception. On the day of the hearing, I wore the same Navy suit I'd worn to Eli's first parent-teacher conference. The one where Mrs. Lewis said he had an engineer's mind and a storyteller's heart. He'd come home that day clutching a drawing of a rocket with 3 stick figures. Him, me, and Lauren, smiling beneath it. It was still on the fridge. Even now. Even after everything. I looked at that picture before I left the house that morning. It felt like a relic from a different timeline. The hearing wasn't for full custody. Not yet. It was for emergency guardianship. Lauren tried to block it. Said I was emotionally unstable. Said I was using her personal choices to manipulate the legal system. Her lawyer was the kind with a smirk built into his face. Polished. Amused. He called me the petitioner instead of my name, like I was already losing. But then my lawyer laid it all out. The medical proxy forms with Mark's name. The petition to remove me from Eli's birth certificate. The financial records showing recurring payments to 2 different men. The emails where she scripted a narrative to feed me if I ever got suspicious. And finally, the genetic testing. The raw lab results, identifying not 1, but 2 potential fathers. Both known to her. Both concealed from me. The judge's face didn't move much. But I saw it. The tightening jaw. The shift in posture. The weight of the lies settling in. Lauren sat across from me, rigid in her chair. No makeup. Her hair pulled back like she wanted to look small. Helpless. She tried tears. A lot of them. But none of them held. When the judge asked her directly, "Why didn't you inform your husband of the uncertainty surrounding Eli's paternity?" She said, "Because it didn't matter. He's the only father Eli's ever known." That was her defense. That I mattered, just not enough to tell the truth. My turn came. They asked me if I understood that I wasn't the biological parent. I said yes. They asked if I understood that I had no automatic legal claim. I said I did. They asked me one final thing. "Why are you pursuing this?" I thought about rehearsing a speech. But all I said was this. Because when he's scared, he calls for me. Outside the courtroom, she caught me in the hallway. "Lauren," her voice barely a whisper. "I never wanted this." I didn't look at her. "No, you just didn't want to be alone. He's my son." I turned then. Slowly. Met her eyes. "So why did you let someone else become his father?" The court ruled in my favor. Emergency guardianship granted. Lauren retained primary custody, for now, but I was named co-guardian for medical decisions and legal matters until the next hearing. It wasn't everything, but it was the first breath I'd taken in weeks that didn't burn. I came back to the hospital that night and sat beside Eli's bed. He was awake this time. Pale, but awake. "Hey, kiddo," I said softly. His eyes fluttered open, then focused. He smiled weakly. "Dad." I didn't cry. I wanted to. I wanted to break down right there and tell him everything. How close I came to losing him. How his mother had turned our life into a maze I was still trying to walk out of. But I didn't. Because none of that mattered now. Not in this room. Not in this moment. Eli reached for my hand. "Did you get the monster?" "What monster?" "The one Mom was scared of." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "She said there was a monster coming. That we had to be careful." My blood went cold. "She said that?" He nodded, already drifting back toward sleep. Later, I checked my phone. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I hit play. It was Mark. "Hey, Jacob. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I didn't know she put me on those forms. I didn't ask for that. I thought I was just helping out back then. I've moved on, man. I swear. But if you need me to back you up in court, I'll do it. She's not well." Not well. The words echoed through me. Suddenly, everything clicked. The late payments. The forged forms. The conflicting lies. The way she was withdrawing, not just from me, but from Eli too. It wasn't guilt. It was calculation. And panic. She'd sensed the walls closing in, and now she was preparing to disappear. The next morning, I called the court clerk, asked if any new petitions had been filed under Lauren's name. There had. A request to relocate with the child. Out of state. Expedited due to familial stress and medical hardship. I sat there with the phone to my ear, my stomach turning to stone. She was trying to run. Again. Only this time, she wasn't leaving a secret behind. She was taking him with her. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, the hospital's fluorescent hum bleeding through the window blinds. Eli had finally fallen into a deeper sleep, his breathing steady under the soft hiss of the oxygen line. But I was wired, mind racing, every nerve in my body flinching at shadows. Lauren was going to run. And this time, she wasn't just rewriting the past. She was stealing the future. The petition to relocate hadn't been approved yet. It had been filed quietly, likely in the hope I wouldn't see it until it was too late. The wording made it sound noble: medical necessity, parental stability, change of environment conducive to healing. But I knew what it was. A final act of control. One more move in a game she thought I didn't know we were playing. I met with my lawyer at sunrise. No coffee. No small talk. Just the documents on the table between us, and the stale breath of panic sitting between every sentence. She's trying to leave the state, I said. She's going to take him. He can't even walk right now, and she's going to uproot him. The lawyer nodded. We'll file an emergency injunction. Today. Will it be enough? She's made a lot of mistakes, Jacob. You've got more than just a case now. You've got a pattern. That should have comforted me. But it didn't. Because patterns don't mean much when someone decides to disappear. I went home that afternoon. Needed to shower. Change clothes. Sit in my own air for 10 minutes. Lauren's car was in the driveway. I didn't expect that. She was inside, in Eli's room. The closet doors were open. Suitcases laid out. Not hidden, not subtle. Like she wasn't even trying to lie anymore. She didn't jump when I stepped into the doorway. I thought you'd be at the hospital, she said without turning around. I came home to pack a bag, I replied. Seems we had the same idea. She zipped a suitcase slowly, the sound like tearing fabric. It's not what you think. No, I said. You're packing our son's clothes, and you filed a petition to leave the state. What am I supposed to think? She finally turned, eyes sharp, mouth pressed thin. He's my son. No, he's our son. You may have given birth to him, but I'm the one who's been there. Every day, every night. When he was sick, when he was scared, when he needed someone to hold the vomit bucket or argue with insurance for 9 hours. She laughed then. A short, bitter sound. You think that makes you his father? I know it does. There was a silence. Taut. Suspended. The kind that only ever ends in one of two ways, destruction or surrender. She chose destruction. You want the truth? She snapped. I knew. Okay. I knew the moment the test came back. I knew Mark might be the father. I knew Charles could have been. I didn't care. You were the safest option. You always have been. You love things too easily. My throat closed around something unspeakable. You were convenient, she continued. You were already devoted. All I had to do was keep the lie straight and let you believe it. And you did. For 6 years, you did. There it was. No more dodging. No more scripts. Just the raw, naked truth. I stepped into the room. Picked up a tiny t-shirt she'd folded. It still had one of Eli's stickers on the inside collar. A faded dinosaur. He used to put them on everything. You're not going to take him, I said quietly. You can't stop me. I looked at her then. For the first time, I really looked. And saw not just the woman who'd lied, but the emptiness that made her capable of it. The black hole at the center of her that needed to swallow love just to feel alive. I already have, I said. The injunction went through. The court froze all relocation actions pending a formal review. The judge ordered Lauren to remain within the county limits. Eli's medical team was informed. Travel restrictions were applied. It bought me time. More importantly, it bought Eli time. To heal. To stay in the only home he'd ever known. Over the next month, I gathered everything. Witness statements. Emails. Testimonies from doctors, teachers, neighbors. Even Mark submitted a signed affidavit, stating he had no desire for parental rights and expressing concern over Lauren's erratic behavior during the early years of Eli's life. Charles, surprisingly, did the same. He said he'd only heard from Lauren once, that she told him not to interfere. that she'd chosen another path. It all painted the same picture. She hadn't just hidden the truth. She'd manufactured an entire reality to control it. At the final custody hearing, I didn't beg. I didn't play victim. I simply told the truth. That I had raised this boy. That I had protected him. That biology is one kind of fatherhood, but not the only one. The judge asked Lauren if she disputed the paternity results. She said no. Asked if she had informed me of the truth before or after the test. She said no. Asked if she considered the emotional impact her choices would have on Eli. She hesitated, then said it was the only way I could survive. And for once, everyone saw what I'd seen from the beginning. The difference between survival and selfishness. I was awarded sole legal custody. She was granted supervised visitation. And Eli got to stay. In his bed. In his room. In his life. That night, after the ruling, I sat beside him again. He was still weak, but healing. He looked up at me. Are we going home? Soon, I said, brushing his hair back. Real soon. He was quiet for a moment. Then, did the monster go away? I smiled. Yeah, he's gone. And then he asked something I'll never forget. Are you really my dad? I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just nodded. Always, I said. Forever. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.